We're going to be happy to take questions, but I appreciate this opportunity to be here today to talk about the issues that face West Virginia. We are running in a very important race that matters for the future of our state, our coal miners' jobs. We need someone who's going to attack the substance abuse epidemic, who has the experience, the integrity, and the knowledge to ensure that we will protect our citizens. That's my record over the last 4 years. We've helped save thousands of coal miner jobs by going all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court and winning in a 5-4 vote. We created the first substance abuse fighting unit within the Office of Attorney General, going from half to 5 investigators and positioning the state to be a leader in taking on substance abuse. Our best practices initiative is going to dramatically reduce opiate abuse by 25 to 40%. And that's why it's earned the support of over 25 state and national groups. Our work managing the efficiency of the office has led to incredible results. We've voluntarily returned over $33 million back to the state's general fund. We've cut legal fees and instituted a new transparent way of paying for outside counsel. All good government. And we've gone after the good old boy network that Doug Reynolds represents. Let me tell you this. Doug Reynolds represents a return to the past. Doug Reynolds has been deceitful in this campaign. He's attacked my wife, and he is an avowed supporter of Hillary Clinton, having donated $2,300 to her campaign. Doug Reynolds also has been against coal and coal miners, not only voting for cap and trade, which will cost our state thousands of jobs, but he stepped in and voted for legislation that would have prevented me from suing the EPA and protecting coal miner jobs. Can you believe that? Doug Reynolds also has no record to speak of fighting substance abuse, while Huntington is at the epicenter of the substance abuse problem in our state. Doug Reynolds, as a legislator, did not support one piece of legislation as a sponsor to try to fix the problem. He was too busy trying to garner more government contracts for himself and his family. In fact, since 2006, he's been able to bring $50 million for he and his family, and he has failed to disclose a number of those contracts in potential violation of the law. This is a man that cannot be trusted, and this is a very important job. And that's why I'm eager to have a debate on the issues and to learn more, finally, about where Doug Reynolds stands. I have a record. It's a very strong record. And I'm not going to let someone who's barely had to work a day in his life, who's inherited millions from his family, lie and buy his way into this election. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I'd be happy to grant the time back to Doug Reynolds.
Thank you all for the opportunity to be here today and for this debate today. My name's Doug Reynolds. I'm from Huntington. I'm a 4th generation West Virginian. And I have a history, he's talking about my record, I have a history of service. I graduated from WVU College of Law. I went my first year as a public defender. I'm the only one in this candidate that's worked in the trenches as a prosecuting attorney and actually put drug dealers in jail. I spent 5 years doing that as a prosecutor. I spent 10 years in the legislature. I sponsored many pieces of legislation over those 10 years to deal with the substance abuse problem. I've helped the peer programs and things for substance abuse treatment, with helping with starting the Healing Place, which is now Recovery Point in Huntington. So I've battled for substance abuse since I have been in the legislature the last 10 years. Now I want to correct a few things that were just said. I've been endorsed by the West Virginia coal miners of this state, I think every single election. I was endorsed by the Coal Association every election until my previous one in 2014. I have a history of protecting the coal industry. And you know why? Because my father-in-law is a retired mine worker. My brother-in-law still works for Arch Coal. So coal runs deep in my veins, and I'm an avid protector of our coal industry. Now, the Attorney General talked about substance abuse and what his office has done. The last 4 years, we have lost the battle with drugs. Can anyone really deny that? And we look at the substance abuse problems all across our state. We look down in southern West Virginia. in the pill mill suits, what's going on down there. 241 million doses. Now, he's talked about me attacking his wife. That's absolutely not true. The only issue in this case is his wife is a lobbyist for Cardinal Health. It was until a few months ago. And during that time, he was charged with protecting our state from this horrible epidemic. So I look forward to answering your questions, and I'll yield for the first reporter.
Guys, fire away. Oh, here we go. Yes. The answer to that would be none. And I think what the question is designed to do is to talk about some of our litigation with respect to the EPA. As you know, we led a 27-state coalition, and we won at the U.S. Supreme Court in a 5-4 vote. We took on the Waters of the United States rule and helped organize a 30-state coalition to get a stay of that terrible regulation, which would have a negative impact on farmers, on landowners, on energy interests, on teachers. Across the board, people would be hurt under the WOTUS rule. We stepped up on immigration because this administration utterly violates the rule of law. And we stood up on the transgender suit. Why? Because that does affect West Virginia and their values. Doug Reynolds would not be in the same place in all of these instances because, and here's how we know it, he supported legislation, 4490, that literally would have blocked me from going in many of these situations. I would have had to get approval in a number of situations from the governor or the legislature under his legislation. You know what that means? That means Obama and Clinton win. We cannot have that. Thank you for your question.
Let me go ahead and answer. Let me answer that question. I think what she was asking about is the waste of money. First of all, hiring a film crew to film him was $14,000 just to film him doing that. The second thing is, in consumer protection, he wanted to hire a political consultant, a lifetime political consultant with consumer protection monies in order to work on his staff. And then finally, the thing that really bothers me most is we've had this drug epidemic for 4 years. And it's just this year, just several months before the election, he's spending $150,000 advertising on Metro News for these football games of the week. And my question is, we've had a drug problem for 4 years. The drug problem didn't just pop up right before an election.
So let's go to the record for that for a moment. We created the Substance Abuse Fighting Unit in the office. We did it in 2013. Doug doesn't know the facts. Doug doesn't know the office. And let me go further. 4490, you don't know what it did, but it would have blocked me from suing the EPA. Interestingly, it would have blocked me from going down to Mingo County, where I went down there to protect kids who were sexually abused. Under Doug Reynolds' legislation, I wouldn't have been able to stop child rape. Let's be clear about this. This is someone who does not know the office of Attorney General. And I can prove what I'm saying.
I would just like to address the Attorney General Ethics and Accountability Act. And I think it's clear that no matter who the Attorney General is, I had proposed this almost exact legislation under former Attorney General McGraw. And I would support the same legislation if I was the Attorney General, frankly. Because there's a lawyer and there's a client. And I think we all know about that special relationship. And we should all be pulling together on these suits, not having our own independent whims when we file suits on behalf of the state.
And under that approach, no suits against the EPA, and we let the Obama administration run roughshod over our way of life here in West Virginia. I am not going to let that happen. That's why we know Doug Reynolds is an apologist for Hillary Clinton, and he will not protect coal jobs.
Governor, does anyone really believe that Governor Tomlin, Speaker Armstead, and Senate President Cole wouldn't try to fight against the EPA and fight for our coal miners? All three of those gentlemen.
Was I ever asked to do it by them? No. I was not asked by the governor. We went in because we, under the law, under the Burton case, can speak independently. Doug Reynolds tried to eliminate that because he was deeply concerned. He knew I would attack the EPA to protect coal miners. He knew I would protect Second Amendment rights. and he knew I would go after Obama overreach. That is not what Doug Reynolds will do if he gets elected. All right, next question. Go ahead.
I haven't decided yet. To be truthful, I'm going to listen to the whole thing like it always does.
Okay, so
I have not donated to Hillary Clinton since Mr. Morrisey has been a practicing lawyer in the state of West Virginia. So let's go back.
Doug Reynolds, let's make sure we know the record here. Doug Reynolds donated $2,300 to Hillary Clinton. Doug Reynolds also donated to Barack Obama. You know what that tells me? He is a liberal through and through, and he cannot be trusted to protect West Virginia jobs or to stand up for our values. That's the Doug Reynolds record, and he can't run away from it.
I'm the only person that has ever employed private West Virginia jobs in this state in my lifetime.
Yes,
Attorney General Morrisey and Mr. Reynolds. First, Mr. Morrisey, what is left for your office to do against the EPA? And Mr. Reynolds, what would you do as Attorney General to fight the EPA, if anything?
I will fight the EPA anytime they threaten jobs in West Virginia, whether that be the coal industry, whether that be the natural gas industry, or any industry, frankly, for that matter, regardless of who the president is.
I think a couple things. One, we all know who has the record of fighting the EPA, and it's certainly not Doug Reynolds, because we know, factually, that he not only voted for cap and trade, which would cost West Virginia thousands of coal jobs, but he tried to limit my authority to sue the EPA and came up with all these nonsense political reasons, dressed it up in a party line vote that 36 attorneys general said they'd never seen before. That was a partisan effort to defang the Attorney General's office from going after the EPA. In my next term, I plan to finish our Supreme Court case against the administration. We won at the U.S. Supreme Court in February in a 5-4 vote. Justice Scalia passed 4 days later. Now we're back in the D.C. Circuit. I expect this is going to go back up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I will say this, and I don't think Doug or anyone here can argue it. If this case goes up to the Supreme Court and Doug Reynolds is the Attorney General, one, he will not be leading the national lawsuit, and I think all AGs and people would know that. And two, he would compromise the litigation, putting many more thousands of coal miners' jobs at risk. He's barely practiced law in the last 4 years. He's a part-time lawyer. He's not ready for the job.
Go ahead.
Okay, I know I've... Is this on? I just have a question for both of you. I know I've sat down, both of you and talked about this. I think everyone knows kind of how contentious and nasty this race has gotten. And I just want to know if you both are proud of how this race has turned into. I want to know if you think that both of you are using steps of picking little things out, taking low blows at one another instead of talking about the real issues. If you think that that's how it's turned into, or if you're proud of how it's headed.
Well, I can answer that. I would say not only are we proud of our record, but every ad that we've done is factual. We can back up what we say. Doug can't. It's one of the reasons why he had to change 2 ads. He's probably going to have to change another one because of the ad that he just released today. More lies, more deceit. He is deceitful Doug Reynolds. Now, my record is clear, and every single issue that's been raised, we can back up. We have a record of defending coal miners. We have a record of fighting substance abuse and receiving the support of serious people. Whereas Doug Reynolds couldn't tell you how he's going to address substance abuse. I welcome to hear that. Finally, we have a record of protecting taxpayer money, not only returning $33 million back to the state's general fund, but cutting legal fees and saving close to $5 million in terms of outside counsel costs. That's a record to be proud of. That's what we're running on, and we're not going to let Doug Reynolds' smear attacks hurt us.
I would just like to start off with that. Starting in March, there was a gentleman standing right there. He's filming right in front of me right now. Started following me and my family around. And who is this guy standing right there? He's paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. They've shown up at parks, fairs, festivals, harassed my 3-year-old daughter. So let's start with how it started back in March. Now, we both spent some money and put ads on the air. This other group has continued to spend more money than either one of us combined in this race. Now, they spent over $4 million last time I checked. Almost all negative ads the last few months against me and my family. Now, I'm proud of the campaign we've run. The ad he's talking about today is a CBS report that's done on him, CBS investigative report they did. And that's all the ad is. It goes through and it clips it down to 1 minute. So the viewers can make up their mind how they feel about the issues with Cardinal Health, the amount of medication, the lobbying that's happened with Mr. Morrisey's wife, he accused me of attacking, while he's been Attorney General. That's what this race is about. It's about integrity. It's about jobs. It's about our kids.
You know, this race is about integrity. And when I have an opponent whose ad has been taken down twice and wants to blame me for coal miner job loss or the substance abuse epidemic, I know he's being deceitful. And I can look him in the eye and know I can back up everything I'm saying, and he can't back up his. You know what happens? When the partisan opponents file complaints and call the liberal media, they're going to get stories that they want. But we've been able to debunk every single charge that's come out. You know why? Because we have a record of accomplishment and we speak the truth. And I would note, Doug, why have you had to change 2 of your ads because they were false? I haven't had to change my ads, and you know what I say is true.
I would say this, that we've never had to change our ads.
Yes, you have. That's another lie, and I can prove it. That's a lie. 2 ads now. Now, please, if you're the press, let's keep track of this. Let's keep track of this, the lie count. Go ahead, Doug.
The ad had to do with his house. His wife's house was in Virginia, okay? That's not any of my business. The issue is about his roots in this state, and that's what this is about.
Look, I have more West Virginia values than you'll ever have.
4 days before he filed for Attorney General.
Look, let's look at a couple things, and I think we want to make sure people understand the facts. Doug Reynolds said that the Attorney General lived in the state of Virginia. Now, I want the press to pay attention. Virginia Street, maybe, over in the East End, but not the state of Virginia. And with respect to the claim that he made about my wife, and Doug, you should apologize for bringing my wife into the ads. I'm not going to bring your wife and your children into this race. I don't think that's proper. But when you mention that your wife lives in Virginia, you don't mention the fact that my wife took care of her mom, who passed from cancer last year, and her dad, who has dementia, who's a memory center. That's the lowest form of politics, and that's why people are calling him out for his deceitful race, and slimy, they've called it.
Wait a second. Your wife is a lobbyist for Cardinal Health.
He doesn't address the question, note that.
No. While he's been Attorney General, her and her firm have made $1.5 million in the case that he's supposed to be protecting us from these people. That's what this is about. I feel sorry for his wife. I really do. I mean, your wife, I'm sure, works very hard with her family, and I can tell you, I know how stressful that is when you have a sick family member. But that's not what this is about, Mr. Morrisey.
That is what this is about. What he did is he went after my wife, and even though they know what's going on, and they modified the ad, but they never fundamentally corrected the fact why my wife was there. I think it's low to do that. But the other point I would mention is this. When I took office, I did the right thing. I stepped away from cases. We handled things right. You know, my wife used to represent companies for many years, long before I was the Attorney General, having nothing to do with the substance abuse epidemic in West Virginia. And Doug Reynolds has the gall to blame people about the substance abuse epidemic when he's in Huntington, the epicenter of the crisis, and does not lead the sponsorship of one bill to address it. You've done nothing, Doug, to address the area in your backyard. How can we promote you as Attorney General?
Can we ask a question about drug addiction?
Go ahead.
So one of the things going on with all of the drug lawsuits is that they are being settled, and that is a legitimate instance where, you know, 2 parties are coming to an agreement. The question is, you know, from a societal standpoint, to understand the crisis, you have to have information on it. Why is it that you are not releasing DEA records that were cited in a lawsuit? And would you push in the future to make sure that all of the information is brought forward and that the public knows about it, not just the lawyers who are litigating the cases?
Yet another lie from my opponent. My opponent indicated that there was some secrecy involved. Do you know that I have always stood for transparency? First of all, the judge in this case, is the one who decided that the records need to be kept confidential, not the Attorney General's office. That's the fact. So we have to follow the judge's orders here. And for my opponent to criticize settlements that we make, when we've brought in over $38 million in drug and drug-related settlements back to the state, is hypocrisy, because he doesn't know what the details are, and for him to make these claims is ridiculous. But sir, I stand for transparency. We've always wanted that. I'm the one who actually, our office, filed the motion to make sure that there was transparency in the case. Those are the facts, but we can't control what judges do, and so Doug has been trying to mislead people on that point.
That's absolutely not true.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
We filed a FOIA asking for DEA records that were cited in the cases with your office, and that hasn't been fulfilled.
Yes, sir. What we do... Hello? What we do is we actually file and we respond to FOIAs in the order that we get them. So we get a lot of FOIAs from your office, as you all know. The Charleston Gazette spends a lot of time trying to attack my office. But we respond in kind, and we've always been responsive to this, and will continue to be so. And I think that's critical, because we have a more transparent office than anyone's ever seen. I'd also note one fact. Doug Reynolds attacks these pill cases. When I came into office, what did I do? I actually allowed the lawyers that were appointed by my predecessor, Darryl McGraw, to keep working on the case. Why? Because I wanted things to be done the right way. I didn't do what Doug Reynolds did, which is go after the Attorney General's office, try to defund it, number one. Number two, I didn't try to prevent the Attorney General's office from suing the EPA, protecting Second Amendment rights, and being able to go to Mingo County and file a civil rights injunction to protect little girls who are victimized by sexual abuse and rape. That's the Doug Reynolds record.
What about Donald Trump?
I have a question about sexual abuse.
Wait a second.
Sorry, along with the substance abuse, beyond what is already being done, the substance abuse unit and the bills that have been passed, what I guess moving forward can also be done to continue to crack down?
I believe that one of the problems is, first of all, we have to have more transparency. And for them to have to go to court to get a FOIA to do that, these were agreed orders that kept this quiet. It wasn't like the Attorney General's office fought these. They agreed with the defendants, and they agreed, and of course the judge signed off on the order. It's been the newspaper outlets that have had to go to court, that have had to FOIA and get those from the court, that the judge had to release.
He just makes facts up. You just make facts up.
I didn't
You have
interrupt
no
you, sir.
idea. You have
I guess
no
maybe
idea.
more specifically, is there a drug wholesalers? I guess who is that you guys are actually going to specifically go after?
Yeah, Doug, please.
I believe the drug wholesalers, the manufacturers, the pharmacists, the people that know that this has been going on in many of our communities, and when you see this, the criminal cases brought, many cases, these have been going on 3-4 years before they get brought to trial. We need to have more aggressive action. These cases need to go to trial. And then when there's settlements, there needs to be admissions of responsibility.
Okay, so let me go through what someone in the office actually would know about. We've been very aggressive going after companies where there's evidence of wrongdoing. And we know that. I sued McKesson, one of the largest healthcare companies in the nation. I was the first Attorney General in the nation to do an enforcement action against Mylan for the EpiPen. Doug Reynolds attacked me for that. We went after Frontier. We've been able to realize $160 million in value for the citizens of our state. But you have to be able to evaluate when to go to trial and when not. And all of these settlements came through the recommendation, ready for this? Not only of Darryl McGraw's old lawyers, but the governor of the state and the state agencies wanted to settle the case. And Doug Reynolds doesn't understand the attorney-client relationship, because he's making these arguments. You wouldn't be able to do anything different if you were in that office. If the governor said, I want to settle a claim, and it's legitimate, then you have to follow it. Now, the AG can act independently to pursue consumer protection claims. But what happened in these cases is that the governor actually said, this is what we wanted to do. What you have here is a person that's pathologically incapable of telling the truth. And I think it's important that people know that I'm running against someone with a liberal record versus my results-oriented conservative record, protecting jobs, fighting substance abuse, saving taxpayer money.
You brought up the presidential election and sexual abuse, but you support a sexual predator for president of the United States. Can you comment on that?
I've always been very clear. I am absolutely and categorically opposed to Hillary Clinton as the President of the United States. And I've always said that it's my intent to support the Republican nominee, but I haven't been pleased with all the different choices. What I can say is this: if we allow Hillary Clinton to get elected president, we're going to be surrendering more jobs to this administration. And the election is about a choice. On one hand, you have a candidate that's donated $2,300 to Hillary Clinton and 2 other donations, I believe, to Barack Obama, a very liberal candidate, versus someone else with a proven conservative record. The difference in this race is clear, and I think voters need to hear that.
One more
What's
question.
the matter? Okay. Well, actually, I was hoping to keep this up, no?
One more
But go
question
ahead.
then. One more
Want to
question.
take more
then.
questions?
One more.
Let me take, you gave a
What?
question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, yeah, I'll answer that question. I think it's an important issue. Every law enforcement officer I talked to from Huntington 2 years ago came to me and said, this is a bad bill. It's going to make it harder to do our jobs. And one of the amendments that they proposed was, and I might have supported it had it done this, that we would only allow it for West Virginia citizens. And that was shot down on the House floor. And I could not support the permitless carry, constitutional carry bill with that. With the law enforcement, the people in the trenches telling me that it would make their jobs harder.
Question. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we finished our questions. I'll just
Well,
note that
one more.
my position. Actually, I'm happy to take other questions, but
What?
before we get repeat questions, we're going to be fair about it. The Gazette gets to ask the AG's office questions a lot. We're going to be fair about this.
So does
Who's
everyone.
next?
So, one of the questions that I have is not a repeat, is both of you obviously support litigating the Clean Power Plan. That makes sense in a state like West Virginia. Do either of you believe in climate change, which most scientists believe is having outsized impacts on every part of the world, besides, including West Virginia? I can understand litigating whenever your constituency works in a fossil fuel industry, but do you also understand the environmental impacts?
Look, I'll take that first. I get these questions all the time when people are trying to divert attention from the matter at hand. The issue for the Attorney General is to focus on being the chief legal officer of the state. When West Virginia citizens are put at risk or laws are being violated, I will step in and I will defend the citizens of our state. And I'm not the governor, I'm not the legislature, so we can't weigh in and make those policy decisions. So we're going to keep going. We've had a lot of success so far, and we're going to see that success continue during my next term.
Well, I'll go ahead and answer the question, since the last 2 questions he hasn't bothered to answer. I think if you look at the scientific evidence, there's a lot of evidence that there is climate change. The question is, if we all stopped mining coal, would it change that? And that's absolutely not. And first of all, we need to be protecting our jobs. We need to be looking out for the citizens of our state.
Okay, I think closing statements, since I went first. Doug, go ahead.
Sure. I appreciate you all coming out here today for this debate. It's been a great day. I'm a 4th-generation West Virginian, and I think you need to look at that experience that each of us brings to this role. I was a prosecutor for 5 years. I've served in the legislature for 10 years and worked with both parties, many times crossing my own party on things that wasn't popular. But most importantly, I've been a job creator. In 2012, he attacked me for being a part-time lawyer. I represented a company, worked on the board, did some things, and they were in trouble. It would have been about a loss of 350 jobs. I was asked to run the company for several years, and I've done that. If you look today, I just got a report, we have 920 jobs. I'm the only candidate in this race that has signed the front of a check for a West Virginia person, for one of our citizens. We've got big challenges in this state. Jobs, substance abuse, which we spend a lot of time talking about. And really the question is, who do you trust most to deal with this problem? Somebody that's been a prosecutor, somebody that works, that deals with employees with substance abuse issues and having deterrent programs and things of that nature to deal with it, and somebody that hasn't taken one penny from the pharmaceutical industry. There's been plenty of negative ads, so I'm not going to attack him in this last part. Each of you has an opportunity to look at the records, go out there, and vote for the person you think best will represent you, not the special interests.
I think this election is about a very clear choice. There are two fundamentally different philosophies at stake here for the future of West Virginia. On one hand, you have an Attorney General who has a strong conservative record over the past 4 years. I took on the EPA when it wasn't the easiest thing to do. I took him all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I beat him, and I will beat him again and again and again. I took on the tough fights that no one else wanted to. I created the first ever disability fraud unit within the Attorney General's office, saving $1.2 million in 6 short months. We worked to not only keep the federal government off our back, but to make sure that we were really fundamentally addressing the substance abuse epidemic in our state. When you create the first substance abuse fighting unit in the office, ensuring that there are lawyers and investigators brought to bear to handle serious issues, that makes a real difference. We also ended the Friends and Family Plan in West Virginia that Doug Reynolds wants to restore. We returned $33 million back to the state's general fund and her taxpayers and cut outside counsel fees. Now this race is about clear choices, and I think if you look at Doug Reynolds' record, it's one that's very thin. Doug doesn't respond to the fact that he's been a part-time lawyer over the last 4 years. It's true. Yeah, he's working in business issues. This is a serious job for a lawyer.
He's creating jobs.
And he does not know what he's doing with respect to how the office operates on the most basic level. That's why he filed legislation which would have limited my ability to sue the EPA, to challenge sexual abuse when there may be conflicts, and ultimately to put a wrench in the Attorney General's ability to do good things for the state. The direction of this campaign is clear. I think Doug's embrace of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and a liberal philosophy is in stark contrast to what we've been able to do. And I'll end with one final point. This is a race about who's going to protect the working man. Now, on one hand, you get a guy, a rich guy, who's never really had to work for anything in his life, and he parachutes in, barely practicing law, and he's spending millions and millions and millions of dollars that he's inherited from his family fortune. I've worked hard my whole life. I came and brought myself up from my own bootstraps. Youngest of 4, my dad was a World War II veteran. My mom was a nurse at the Veterans Administration. We didn't have much money. I worked hard. Doug Reynolds doesn't know the meaning of a hard work ethic, and we are not going to let him buy this election with more lies and more liberalism. Thank you very much for coming.